Sue Moroney.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and may I place on my record, along with other colleagues in this House, my condolences to the family, friends and colleagues of Lieutenant Tim O'Donnell. But I do want to spend my time focusing on the things that we actually can change here today in this Parliament. Sadly, we cannot change what occurred to Lieutenant O'Donnell. But the things we can change are actually the future of our country. Because what we do need is we need a plan. We need a government with a plan going forward so that people in this country can have every opportunity that they need. And this government told us that their fundamental purpose was going to be to close the gap, the wage gap with Australia. That's what they were going to do. And now we've been discovering that that was just a bumper sticker slogan. It was just kind of a brush off, because there's no plan that actually underpins that ideal, that bumper sticker slogan of closing the wage gap with Australia. Because what in fact we're finding is that the wage gap is increasing, and not just increasing by a small amount, but by $50, more than $50 a week. That's how much the wage gap has increased between Australian wages and New Zealand wages since the National Government took office. And that either means that they have a plan that is failing or they have no plan at all. And it would seem today, and in the previous days this week in the House and last week, what we're discovering is that there is no plan. There's this talk of milestones and there's this talk of brush-offs, but no actual plan. And I think today it was evident again that we had the Minister of Women's Affairs, Pansy Wong, going into complete denial and complete spin overdrive to say that there is no problem with the gender pay gap in this country, and there clearly is. I would like the Minister of Women's Affairs to spend her energy and her time actually creating a plan to close that gap rather than denying that it actually exists, because that is the sort of change that we need going forward. But, Mr Speaker, it's all very well to talk about the statistics and for us to have a fight about that in this House, whose statistics are right and whose are wrong and which series and, what year they start from, but we're talking about real people. And I want to talk about a couple of real people, Paul and Bronwyn Neely in Hamilton, who went to the Waikato Times last week and said, look, this country's not working for us. We're going to have to move to a country where there is a plan. And the country where they've found that there is a plan is Australia. Hobart, Australia, is where they're moving to, because Mr Neely, Paul Neely, who is a landscape architect, was made redundant 15 months ago at the height of the recession, but some 15 months later he still has not been able to find any work in New Zealand. And he's scoured the whole country. I went and met with him the other day. He has scoured the entire country looking for work, but he hasn't been able to find it. And what he said in the Waikato Times was, if I'd found a job, we'd have stayed here. The government really hasn't put enough money into this economic stimulus package. I don't think a national cycleway really cuts the mustard. But that's just the beginning of it, because the Neelys have worked out that they are currently living in a country where the government has no plan to fix their problem, has no plan to actually increase the number of jobs available, and they are picking up their two young children, taking their future away from New Zealand and taking that future to Australia. And, Mr Speaker, because of the stage they're at their lives, they are taking these specialist skills, because Mrs Neely is a registered nurse. They're taking the landscape architect skills and the registered nurses skills and their two young children and relocating to Hobart. And they won't be back for some time, sadly, because they very much want their future to be in New Zealand. That's what they told me. But there is no future here for them in New Zealand. And once they take their children overseas at the young ages that they are at, their children will start school in Hobart, and they won't be back until their children have completed their schooling, because they want to make sure that their children actually get some consistency in their education. So because this government right now has no plan, and there has not been the investment in infrastructure that would have allowed Mr Neely to continue on his good work as a landscape architect, because this government has no plan, we are losing that family and hundreds like them to Australia, where they have got a plan. And I think that that's what is exposing this government. It said it was going to close the gap with Australia, but clearly it has no plan, and it promised New Zealanders a brighter future. It promised New Zealanders they would deliver that, and what they're finding that the brighter future is not here in New Zealand under this government, but the brighter future is in Australia.
Jackie Dean.
Press release from the New Zealand